Northwest, Washington State, and I want to make sure it's Washington State because most people think when you say Washington, it's Washington, D.C. But we have a beautiful morning. I know Erasmo here, he doesn't like the weather. I love this weather. I do. I love all the rain.
I'm not a fan. I prefer the sunny, warm weather.
So, and yeah, it's it rained a lot this week. But yes, we have today is November 5th. And the year has gone by so fast. And I was telling Davida that it's overwhelming everything that's going on around the world. I mean, it's a lot going on. But here we in Siembra. My name is Yazmin Ford, host of the show Siembra. We have our guest, first time here, Davida Sharp. Haygood.
Yep, you got it.
And we have Erasmo. Erasmo is already one of us here in Siembra, here in VT Radio Universal. And we're going to talk about this is the last stretch of the election. They're running for the district, Puyallup District, School Board District for director. And we have Erasmo running for Better Schools District Director. So we're going to talk about why it is that I believe that the local elections are even more important than the national. I do. But we're going to talk about that a little bit and why it is that people need to vote locally because it affects you directly. But before that, I want to just touch a little bit of bases. I like to talk a little bit of bases about things that are going on nationally and internationally. We're talking about what's going on in the Gaza Strip. I was driving and I didn't want to listen, but I was listening and I just cringed because of what's going on. Almost 9,000 to 10,000 people have died in a month. That is just crazy what's going on in the Strip. We're also talking about my country. Panama is in turmoil. Panama has about 13 days right now in strike. The government decided to sign a contract with a mining business from Canada, and they're taking over land that is protected, environmentally protected, to mine for gold, allegedly. And for 40 years, and Panamanians around the entire country, not everybody, every state in Panama is in a hole right now.
Wow.
Everybody, they even have gone to the president's house.
Wow.
Yes, outside.
Wow.
And all the legislators, they've been in their house outside. $350 million. That's what they're going to get. Panama is going to get every year. That's nothing. And they're going to also free tax. They don't have to pay. The Canadian business don't have to pay no tax. And if you live close to the mining place, you can take the land or whatever. They can take your land and say, we need that land. So the indigenous, like here, the native lands, right. They are taking those lands that they give to the indigenous, that basically the same thing they're doing in the Middle East.
Right.
Don't even get me.
Right.
You take my land, and then you tell me I'm going to give you some of my land.
Right.
Right. Right. That doesn't make sense, right? You take someone's land and then sell it back to them.
And I'm going to give you this part. This is my land.
The entitlement and audacity.
Yeah. That's true.
So,
wow.
I don't even get me started because this can be a show by itself, right? So, but I'm proud. I'm very, very proud because and I think the United States will do that one day, stop everything. Everywhere. The politicians would be behaving differently.
Yes.
They would stop and say, okay, well, maybe we need to do something.
Right.
So I'm very, very proud. And yes, but it's completely turmoil right now. Everything is on hold. And Panamanians strike differently. it's music everywhere. It's drum everywhere.
It's like a party.
Yes.
Okay.
It's funny.
Interesting.
Anyway, so I did my little rant today, and we're going to start today. I want to start with you, Davida, because Erasmo, we know a little bit more about you. You've been here a lot.
4 times. Over the years since 2019.
Yes.
Right? It's like 4 times.
So tell us a little bit about you.
Well, I am a longstanding Puyallup resident. I have 2 children, one who graduated and one who's currently in high school now. I like to say the profession that pays my bills is I'm a professor of education at Pierce College, located in Lakewood, Puyallup, and JBLM. I've been there now 8.5 years, so done that quite a bit. I have a background in education. I have a master's in special education. Children are like, that's just my love. And then my work that is almost part of my self-care is I love community organizing. I do social justice. I really believe in authentic community. So I don't feel good if we all aren't in community together well and healthy. And so that's a lot of what I do outside of my day-to-day work. So other than that, I'm a friend. I'm a sister.
So you are originally from here? Or
I'm from Arizona, Phoenix, Arizona. Hot Arizona.
How do you end up here?
I wanted something different. I wanted something different for my children. For my son, at the time it was just me and my son. I was a single mom, got in a U-Haul and made the trip from Phoenix to Washington. I looked where the weather was better and the bugs weren't as big and there weren't snakes. And okay, there we go.
That's a big transition from Arizona to Washington State.
It is. But I say it was good because I knew I wanted a different environment for my son. Raised a black man.
Hello.
I wanted a different environment.
A son too.
So it's been good. It's been good for the most part. There's been some challenges, as you can imagine, but decided. I come from a long line of social justice. I talk a lot about my papa, who would take us on. Well, it was more of he was my pastor neighbor.
Okay.
Who his wife was our caregiver, but we found ourselves spending more time with them than at home because they were across the street and we're there all the time. So when he was out marching, he would take us with him. They fought for Martin Luther King holiday in Arizona. He fought for labor rights in Arizona. I remember sitting in the living room as a kid, just hearing the conversations amongst the leaders. And so I think that absorbed in me.
Yes.
So as an adult, when I see or I encounter injustice, my instinct is something has to change. And so I think that's where a lot of that came from.
We're black women, we are big when it comes to social justice. We are just so big. We don't get the credit that we, especially in the 1960s.
True.
There was a lot of women, Martin Luther King,
Yes.
behind Martin Luther King, starting before Martin Luther King.
No.
And we don't talk about that, So, and I don't like when they say we are a strong black woman because it dehumanizes.
Right. I get that a lot.
I don't like that.
I get that a lot.
Because then you're not allowed to cry. You're not allowed. You're always in a fighting, defensive mode.
Right.
When they say that, you're not. I don't like it. But that's another. Maybe a show for me
there's
and
the
you.
the expectancy of you're strong. You're gonna carry everything. You're gonna do this, but you don't have any space to be human.
Don't cry. Don't feel sorry for yourself. Don't do none of that. Just be strong.
Right.
That's not human.
Right.
But yes, and I have Erasmo Ruiz right here next to me, next to my left. Tell us a little bit about yourself for the people that don't know you.
Well, my name is Erasmo Ruiz. I was born and raised in Oregon to farm-working parents from Mexico, and I was a first-generation college student and college graduate. I earned a bachelor's degree in criminology and criminal justice and also a Master of Science in education. And I lived abroad in Spain for several years. I taught English, social studies, and natural science at a primary school. And then just basically, the last 10 years I've been working in mental health, education, social work. So I have all that experience under my belt. I moved out to Washington in 2017 to pursue a career in social work out here in Renton. I was a bilingual youth counselor, and I have worked at Catholic Community Services for the last almost 5 years, where I met Yazmin. We were coworkers for several years. But yeah, no, I mean, for me, education was the great equalizer, and it helped me reach the quote unquote American dream. And so that's why I'm such a strong advocate for public education, because that's what helped me. That's what taught me the schools. I learned all the tools in public schools to become successful. And so that's why I want to give back, by, being on the Bethel School Board, to make sure that all of our students have the opportunities and resources that I received in my public education. I really do think public education levels out the playing field for a lot of students, especially like myself, that come from disadvantaged, underprivileged backgrounds. And so I feel like now I'm in a position to give back and be a strong advocate for our students. And yeah, it's basically it in a nutshell.
And being a Latino here, how is that? Because, I've been doing a little bit of interpreter work lately, and I go to the schools, and a lot of times I feel that for the Latino and the Black community, we always in this survival mode. Yes. And I say survival mode that here in this country, this country is a blessing to the immigrants. That's why you see we want to come here. But you work a lot. Right. This country, you work a lot. And I noticed with the Latinos and even with the Blacks lately, because I don't have a 9-to-5 job for right now, but I noticed that in the weekdays when I would go to certain places, I saw white people like you, young, just having a good time. I have not seen one Black person or Latino, because we working. And one of the things that happen is that when you work in that whole day, I don't see that engagement of the Black or Latino community with the schools and with the kids' school is designed to be that way, right? Because you're working a lot, and we come here in this country to work, right? So when they talk about Mexicans and Latinos, they say we work a lot. So it makes me sad, because I don't see that engagement, that they are worried about this. I don't see the value of education, because you're working. Right. And in our community, a lot of times they tell kids, just work. We work with youth that comes from other country, and they just want to work. They want to get their papers fixed so they can work, so they can help their family back home. Yeah. So the value of education and not understanding. I remember working with Erasmo and telling the kids sometimes, if you go to school and you get a degree, then you don't have to work as hard, right, and make more money, and then you can help your family. Right. So the value of education in this, how do you got that love for teaching? Because I think teachers are awesome. I think teachers are badass. I don't know if I can say that
yes,
word.
They are.
I think they're badass. You leave your fingerprints all over the kids. Right. And I work for Tacoma School District. At 3 and 4, they already come with a story. They already has the story. Right. And you leave your fingerprints. So how do you get that love for teaching? Teaching is liberation. When it is that you felt that love for teaching?
When I was little. I would say when I was little. I always, I was a person who was always playing school, and always, part of teaching is caring for people. Part of teaching is helping people and mentoring people. And so that's part of the love of teaching. But as I've gotten older, I realized teaching is my gift of liberation for somebody else. As you're giving the information, as you're giving the skills, you're helping to liberate them to their authentic selves and free them into their authentic life. So that's a lot of where that love comes from. I love people. I love being there. I tell her I'm the biggest hype person for other people, but not for myself. I like to do that. I like to be someone who fix things. And so that's part of my love for teaching. Also with that is being someone who's positioned themselves as an advocate for these children and a champion for these children. And for me right now, my career is for the adults. I'm finding myself doing some of the same things for my adult students as I was doing for my children's students back in the day. So there's that piece. And you said something really, really impactful of like, yes, there is not as much of that interaction, but at the same time, as the system is designed to keep parents and families of color from being able to interact, they're using that same narrative to judge them. You can't be here to interact because you're having to do work all the time, but then we're going to sit back and be like, how can you not interact in your child's life? How can you not be here? Well, the system's been set up so they can't. So that's very important. Because a life of leisure, enjoying life is a privilege for some, but it's gatekept away from others.
Wow. So
there's a book I read, and I wish I could remember the name of it, where it talked about how back in times when people were enslaved, the goal of those plantation owners were to live a life of leisure and have the capital and have the resources, but that was never afforded to others.
Yeah.
So that's what they've been raised to say, like, this is our goal, is to have this life of abundance. But we're told work-life balance. Work and life should not balance. Mm-hmm. It should be life first, and then work helps to fund the life.
Yes.
So, but we've been taught
it
reversed. Yeah. So, yeah.
Yeah, and one of the things I was thinking of with my son, I have one son, and I was an helicopter mom. And I noticed that I was involved. I had the privilege to be more involved because of my ex-husband, and we tried to balance that. I work in the day, he work at night, and we tried to be. And I was a helicopter mom. The teachers in school knew me, and I noticed something. They treat your kid differently when you are involved.
Very much so.
I noticed something.
Yes.
They treat your kids differently when you're involved. That is crazy. Now, Erasmo, how is that love for education become from a background of your parents being immigrants and farm workers? And like I said earlier, we come here with that notion to work. Mm-hmm. How it is that you said, no, you know what? I'm going to change that. And I want to be part of the change in my community. Mm-hmm. Because one thing I notice is also we work hard, but if we go to school, you work smarter and not harder, right?
Exactly.
So how is that impact, and why it is that you want to run and change this view that we have about our Latinos? When they think about Mexicans, they think about cutting your grass, about working in the hotels, cleaning. They think about food at restaurants, but never think about somebody running something big.
Right.
That is changing too.
Well, growing up in a small town in Oregon, I never had a teacher or an educator of color that was there working, and so I saw a need for for someone like myself or a person of color to be involved in the educational system, and that's why I decided to pursue the path that I did in education. I think that students, especially students of color, need to see themselves reflected in the teacher and the people that teach and mentor them. Also, students need to see themselves reflected in leadership, in the administration. So I saw a need for that, especially in Oregon, growing up in that small town called Hood River. But yeah, that's why I pursued the career that I did in education, social work, I saw that there was a need for Latino Hispanics to be involved in the system. And, I think that when students see themselves reflected in other people that look like them, it really inspires them and motivates them. So my experience, growing up through the K-12 system in Hood River was that there wasn't much diversity in the teachers or educators or the administration. Everyone was, white, Caucasian, and so I never saw myself reflected in any of those people. So I kind of just took the initiative on my own because I didn't feel supported by the some of the teachers or the educators that were there. So I just kind of did a lot of my own research, a lot of initiative to go to college, and a lot of it was trial and error. As a first generation college student, I didn't understand everything, but I've always been very savvy at doing research and asking for help. And so somehow I ended up at a community college in Portland, at Portland Community College, and then I ended up starting classes and getting financial aid, and I somehow navigated the system through trial and error. I mean, it was really challenging. I know I failed a few classes my freshman year. But yeah, no, I think that all of my lived experiences, as, going through college as a first generation college student and graduate, I think I have lived experiences in the realm of education, social work, and mental health that would make me a really good asset on the school board. And 1 out of 5 students in our school district is Hispanic, Latino, yet none of the current school board members are Hispanic or Latino. And so I think we need some representation on that school board, and we need someone at the table that's Hispanic or Latino.
Yeah, and I have noticed that you don't see a lot of Latinos teachers, and it's changing. It is changing. Now, I wanted to ask you, Davida, what is the role of a school director? What is this? Because a lot of times the local elections, people don't even look at it. They don't, and sometimes they don't even understand what it is that you do that impacts them directly.
Well, one of the first things that I think is probably maybe the most known part of the role is we are I don't want to say overseers, we're the bosses of the superintendent. Mm-hmm. So we select, we review, we evaluate the superintendents for each school district. Also, we look at policies that are being implemented in the school district, whether they're being adopted, written, revised. We review all of that. Part of also that is how I see is we are a huge advocate for the needs of both the teachers and the students and the staff, and we're supposed to be able to bring it together to be an conclusive plan of how we're going to navigate the school district. And it's important that when we're looking at the school board, that board is representing everybody, because it's kind of like it is the overseeing of the school district as a whole to make sure that is the budget being ran right? Is the budget being allocated right? Are we looking at ways outside of tax money to be able to fund our budget? We have, the next legislation is coming up in January. Are we being aware of what's happening in Olympia? What's coming as far as with bills? We need to connect with some of our legislators to get some bills sponsored and supported. So it is a big free job. It is definitely community service for us.
She said a free job.
It's definitely community service.
Because people would think you're getting paid.
Not getting paid.
Yes.
I think the most we get is maybe like a little stipend for dinner the night of the board meeting. So there's a lot that encompasses it. With what's happening and what the role of a director is.
And what did you decide? Why did you decide to run?
Because I'm a big person on perspectives, and I think I hadn't been drenched enough in each role to understand what it is to be a student, what it is to be a parent in the district, what it is to be a teacher, what it is to be an administrator. So I've been in each of those spots. And so I can sit in the space. I'm so sick and tired of the infighting that's happening. And a lot of times it's based on not facts. Let's sit down, let's look at the facts, Let's look at where the greatest impact is, which is the students, and let's make the best decision for these students. And how are we doing that in supporting our teachers? So I really feel like I am in a position on the board to be, I'm not in the space of all the noise, you know, so we really need to do this right. So
and I was thinking and those roles change based on the district. Erasmo, like you this same thing that she explained, you will be doing too.
Yes, correct.
Okay. The other thing I wanted to ask is about what's going on right now with education right here in the United States. There is a shortage of 300,000 teachers in the country, and the way teachers are treated is crazy.
It's ridiculous.
And we need people like you to advocate.
Right.
I work for Tacoma School District, and when I went in there, my heart sunk. The demoralizing of the teachers,
right.
Even just the way they look,
right.
It made me so sad. And the fighting with one of the teachers that I became friend with, she was part of the union, and she told me there's a cap too. You know, once you get to that cap, you can be working another 10 years and your stuff is not, unless you change roles within the district. I don't know if that's the same in Puyallup Betel School District. So I think you guys are going into an area that is tough.
It is.
Because right now we're looking at teachers, they don't want to teach. Even people that have got the degrees and teach for a year or two, but because the political environment is crazy. What's going on with teachers? So are you guys ready? That's my question. You're ready, Erasmo, with what's going on?
Yeah.
And how to change, because one of the things I always talk with Erasmo is we need term limits. You can't work with human beings for 100 years, because then you get disconnected.
Right.
There's a bubble. I don't think teachers should be in a job for 100 years. I don't think politicians should be. I don't think police should be. I don't think pastors should be. They become disconnected from the community that they're serving.
Right.
So how it is that now you running with somebody that is in there? I know him for him 20 years.
20 years, yeah. We know it's a challenge because this incumbent has been there for so long, but I also decided to run because I noticed that he wasn't really putting in the work. You know, he's just there. He's not really bold in his decisions. You know, he's more of a conservative, and you know, I'm all about bold, progressive leadership. You know, actually standing up, even when you're standing alone. You know, that's just me. I stand up for what's right. And you know, as my some of my campaign advisors call the incumbent a potted plant, because he's just there. He's literally not putting in any effort into the school board. And so, but yeah, no, I think that we need a fresh perspective, you know, fresh leadership on the school board, which is why I also agree with you, Yazmin. We need term limits. You know, we can't have people in the same elected office for 50 years. You know, because you lose that fresh perspective that you get when you elect people that are, you know, working class, that are experiencing the issues, right? And yeah, I mean, there's a lot of challenges in our school district, in particular for the Bethel School District. We have a bus driver shortage, and the bus drivers union doesn't feel supported or validated by the school board members or the superintendent. And so I think we need someone like myself that's pro-labor. You know, I'm endorsed by several labor unions. We need someone like myself who's actually gonna,
young blood.
Yeah,
we need young blood.
Yeah, and you know, someone that's gonna side with the union and actually, you know, support and validate the union members. I think that's really important. And so, we just need a fresh perspective, and I think across the board, that's why term limits are so important. Like Pierce County Council has term limits, 8 years, 2 terms, 8 years.
There should be.
Yeah, there should be term limits for every office. Absolutely.
Yes.
Yeah, I agree.
Now, what has been the barriers for you? What has been the hardest thing, and what it is that you have learned about yourself running this election?
One thing I've learned about myself is I'm smarter, stronger, and much better than I gave myself credit for.
Okay.
And that comes based on, I come from a very authentic space with this. I'm not about putting on a performance. I'm not about saying what people want to hear because I want them to like me. I'm very authentic. And that also has been part of my barrier.
Oh my God.
Because I won't play the game. I won't perform. I'm not going to be anyone's puppet. I'm really about the truth. Another barrier is I'm in a city that has a history of very white ways and wanting their status quo to still be their status quo. And so I am pushing against that. I am pushing against that because
the grain.
Very much so. Everyone knows Puyallup is changing. The demographics of Puyallup is completely changing. We could do a whole nother show of why that's changing, but it's changing. So in order for the needs of everyone in Puyallup to be met, we need people on our board that represent Puyallup. And so it's important. I mean, I look at one thing that's really big for me is why do our school board meetings only come in one language? Why aren't parents able to come in person to the school board, whether English is their first language or not, and be able to fully participate? My background is special education, so I'm all about inclusion. And so I think that's very important. So the barrier is I am a Black woman in Puyallup. I mean,
yes,
I'm a woman in Puyallup. Like, that's a barrier. And I'm not someone who is, I would say, financially of the elite. And so that's a barrier in Puyallup. But guess what? That's Puyallup. The demographics are these real people who have been silenced, who their voices are not brought to the table. We need their voices at the ballot boxes. And so I represent that part of the community who maybe others wish were not part of the community, but we're here and we're strong and we're intelligent, we're incapable. And so that's yeah.
For you, the same question. What has been your barriers and what do you have learned about yourself?
Well, I've learned that I'm really good about talking about myself. I'm really good at that, I've learned. I always thought I was really bad about, talking about myself. Like whenever we have meetings in the past, they'd be like, tell us a little bit about yourself. And back then I was really bad at, telling people about myself. But I've learned that I'm really good at that now. So some of the barriers that I've faced are, obviously initially in the beginning, I'm running against an incumbent that's well-connected, that's been on the board for 20 years. So I really had a challenge getting support in the beginning from elected officials.
Because they didn't know who you were.
They didn't know who I was. I just, even though I had been involved already in the community for a while, I'm the second vice chair for the second LD Democrats, I'm on the Commission for Refugee and Immigrant Affairs. So I was already involved in the community, but politically I wasn't really involved that much. So I think I had a lot of barriers in that regard. Like I would email people, elected officials, I would email them, call them for an interview, or a meeting for me to get their endorsement, and they just would never reach back out. They just would ignore me. So I had that barrier that people didn't take me seriously initially, and also because I'm younger and I'm LGBTQ. So I mean, obviously those were barriers as well, especially in the area where we live. We live in a moderate centrist area, but there's a lot of conservatives as well. So there's been challenges. I'm sure there's a lot of people out there right now that are not going to vote for me just because I'm LGBT, or because I'm Hispanic or Latino. There's been a lot of conservative people that have called me in the last couple of days to inquire about my position on certain things, and they're not topics that my campaign is focused on. So I've just kind of I've responded, but in a way that doesn't directly address their concerns, because I'm not going to go on the record on something that's not relevant to what I'm running on. You know what I mean? They're like fringe issues, not really, I'm focused on supporting teachers, supporting our bus drivers, our para-educators, our classified staff, supporting the students, getting the funding we need for our annual budget without raising taxes. That's the things that I'm focused on, I'm not going to get into these fringe issues about like, transgender females playing in sports. Like, as I said before, like Title IX of the Civil Rights Act protects any female or male to play in the sports that of their gender, so but yeah, there's been challenges, especially fielding these questions from conservatives, like people that are conservative that are against my plan for universal free school meals. Like I've had people call me like, hey, there's no such thing as a free school meal, or people that have said, why do you want to spend our tax dollars on free school meals? But people are okay with us funding a war. People are okay with that kind of stuff, or bailing out Wall Street. People are okay with those things, but when it's for working class people, everyone seems to be against it.
And they don't even talk about the guns,
right?
Oh, let's talk a little bit about that. As a director, and I know this is nationwide, you can do a lot about that, but I have, like I said, I've been going to and doing a little bit of interpreter job, and I'm going to these schools, and now I feel like I'm going into a prison because they have to buzz you in, they got to get you in, got is crazy, and these people are worried about the kid. I tell you a personal story. My son went to Christian school from preschool all the way to first grade, and then I couldn't afford it. It was too much money.
With you.
I couldn't afford it, and I applied for a scholarship for him to continue, and they told me you don't qualify, and I cried, and I talked to God. I called him God, and I said, and he said this to me. He said, you know what? The thing that you want somebody else to teach your son about me, and that is your job.
Yeah,
that's your job to do that. But at the same time, we want to teach kids to live in a world where you don't force other people your beliefs.
Right.
And when I worked in Tacoma School District, I had some kids that they were Jehovah's Witness. I had some kids that, and the parents would come and tell, we couldn't have no Halloween. That I don't do the Halloween thing. You couldn't have no parties because of this one parent. You're not teaching your kids to live in a world that is inclusive when you do that.
Global citizen.
You everybody in your world is not going to be Jehovah's Witness.
Right.
You have to teach your kids to live in a world where people are different.
Right.
And it used to kill me because these kids could not celebrate their birthday. You can bring cake, you can do nothing because of these two little kids.
It's like they're living in a bubble.
Yeah.
How
are we being
But you forcing other people, the other kids are missing out because you want to bring your stuff in the school. And this is what's happening today.
Right.
I don't care if you're Christian or whatever. I don't want my child to participate, fine, but I'm not going to go to the school and tell people nobody else can participate because I don't want my child to do that.
Right. That's called being authentic community. How are we being an authentic community?
So how would you guys you guys can do something about that or no?
As a school district, yes. As a board, yes.
If you don't want your kid in for Halloween, then keep your kid home.
Yeah, no, I agree.
Because everybody else, and teach your kid to look at people where they are, and not you gotta be like me, or think like me, So you guys will have like a voice on that,
will have
because
a
right
voice.
now that's a big thing.
And we have laws,
on.
and we have laws to back that voice. The big pieces, there are laws that back that. The problem particularly is I truly identify as a Christian woman, and I love my beliefs. I love my quote unquote religion. I struggle with people calling it religion. This is my way of life. And so I love what you said. It's my job to teach my child my beliefs. And my child, when she enters or he enters into school, understand there's other people with other beliefs, and we're in this space, in this community where we can love each other. We can love each other's backgrounds and still hold to our own background. I'll still hold to our own belief, but I'm not forcing you. The Bible tells me how to live, because I've adopted it and I've accepted that into my life. It's not telling me how you have to live.
Yeah.
And so it's a struggle where we're not truly teaching our children how to be a global citizen.
I know.
Right.
And we really have to work in that in a way of, okay, I don't do Halloween. I'll take the candy. I prefer it when it's 75% off, but I'll do the candy. I like the candy. If families and kids want to do the Halloween, wonderful. Have at it. I honor that. I'll give you space to celebrate that. I won't do that. I did it this year I dressed up as Tiana with the kids for part of the campaign, but I typically don't do Halloween, and that's okay. We don't have to do everything together as a community.
But the problem that I have is when you force in
You
that.
can't force that.
And you want
Yeah.
everybody to
Can't do that.
You bring it into the school, into your classroom. When my child doesn't, we don't do that at home. Then don't do it at home.
Don't do it at home. That's fine. Don't do it at home.
Yeah.
One thing that I think is important as a teacher, that one thing I used to always love in my class is, especially around the holiday times, we learn about all the holidays. You know, some celebrate Christmas, some don't. We look at all of it, and it kind of broadens that perspective. And when we are saying, not me, when others are saying we have to only do it this way, and you're trying to limit people, you're limiting perspectives. So you have kids who go out in the community.
Thinking part
Exactly.
of it,
You
yes.
have kids go in the community like, wait, everybody's supposed to do it this way because this is how I was taught. You've entered the world.
Yeah.
You've entered the sea of life. How many different creatures are in the sea? If a goldfish enters the sea of life expecting to only run into only goldfish, they're gonna get surprised real quick.
Eat and fast too. So what is the biggest, Erasmo, what is the biggest need that you see right now when it comes to education and the school board and the community?
Yeah, sorry, I just want to answer a little bit to that,
Yes.
that previous
Yes.
question. You know, I really value diversity of opinion, and, you know, just diversity in general is so important for us to deconstruct stereotypes that we have of other people. So if we don't have those diverse voices or those people in the room, then we're always going to hold the serious stereotypes that we have
Right.
of those particular people, you know. So that's why I value diversity so much, and I actually wrote my master's thesis on that, on like the diversification of higher education, how important it is for diversity, diverse others to be, you know, in the fold of education, because, you know, when you meet someone that you have a stereotype about and you actually get to know them, that deconstructs the stereotype you had, you know.
Yeah.
So I think that's why it's so important. But some of the needs, I think, are safety, you know, in our school district. Now there's a lot of bullying, you know, students, if you're bullied, you're constantly in you're not able to learn if you're being bullied, you know. And so I think it's important to address that, you know, to make sure that our students feel welcome and that they're not being harassed by other students. You know, I was personally bullied when I was in middle school, and that really impacted my grades. I was just in survival mode, basically. My brain was shut off, like I couldn't learn, and so I think it's important to create
It's traumatic.
Yeah, it's important.
It's trauma.
Yes, it's important to focus on creating a warm and welcoming environment for all of our students. No one should go to school afraid that they're going to be made fun of or bullied. So I think I really want to focus on that as well as, you know, safety, you know, in general safety, making sure we're being proactive about the safety measures we have at all of our schools, and also addressing the bullying situation. You know, I'm really a strong advocate for anti-bullying, and, you know, making sure that we're teaching our students kindness and acceptance and just learning to work with everyone. You know, I think that's really important.
What about, I wanted to ask you about these school meals. When my son was going to school, my son has a peanut allergy. So that was another story by itself, but he had peanut allergy. And we didn't need to have school school meals, we didn't need it. So I didn't sign him up for it neither. But today living with food is so expensive.
Oh my goodness.
You go to the store with $100 and you get about 5 things.
Yeah,
Right.
exactly.
Right.
You get about 5
So
things.
expensive. Mhm.
So how what is that does to a student that doesn't have, enough food in their bellies, and how the school can be becoming that advocate for a basic human need, that is having good food nutrition in order to learn.
Yeah, no, it's important. Obviously, if a student doesn't have a full belly, they can't learn, obviously. So I think that's why it's so important that, just across the board, we have free school meals for all of our students in our school district. Also, a lot of families are struggling financially. And so if we, as the school board or the school district, can subsidize those meals, that's one less cost for working class families that are struggling right now. A lot of people are still struggling because of inflation. People are losing their jobs. So I think it's great. Like I said before, if the government can fund wars or fund subsidies for billionaires, then I think we can afford to pay for school meals for our public school students. So there's always money for everything else, but there's never money for healthcare, for working class people. So, I'm a strong advocate for getting money from the government that I know they have. They just don't want to give it to us.
It's not their money.
Yeah.
It's their
Yeah.
tax money
Yeah.
anyway.
Exactly.
It's
Yeah.
our money.
We as the middle class pay the most in taxes, just in
Yes.
general. That's where most of the revenue comes from middle class people. So, it's important. And I think that it's something that I'm going to fight for. And there's actually a provision, there's a grant that school districts can apply for universal free school meals. If a certain amount of the households are there's a threshold for that they need to meet in order to qualify for free school meals. But yeah, so I'm going to look into that as well. It's the community eligibility provision. It's a grant, and so there's certain stipulations for the school district or a particular school to qualify for it. But yeah, definitely going to look into that. And I know that there's a bill right now in the state legislature that's also trying to push for all the state schools to get free school meals for all of their students. So I will definitely co-sponsor that or sign on to that, give my testimony so that it passes. I know that they might take that up for this legislative session of I think Senator Tijuana Nobles.
Yep.
I think she's the sponsor of that bill. So
Yep.
definitely reaching out to her and pushing and advocating for that to go through and pass. As I said, there's money there. It's just that they're not. They don't want to give it. I don't think we're being loud enough. So I think we just need to start being really loud, and really advocating for the things that we know that middle class and working class people need.
May I add a little piece to that?
No, I wanted to ask you that too. Go ahead.
Yeah, I love everything that you said, and another piece that that has become my realization is when that time comes, I believe it will come. I love your bill and what's coming up, that free meal is how are we administering it? Because what we found out too, especially during when we're coming out of the pandemic and there was a while all the schools are doing free meals, is the time to get the meals out to all the students. Students were running out of time because our schools are so full with students. Having a 30-minute lunch and trying to give 1,000 kids lunch, kids are there's not enough time to get it all out, so kids are not getting lunch. So I believe it's so important that yes, we have to have that free meal for all students, but we also need to look at how our lunches and our spaces are running to ensure that everyone has access to it. And so when you have kids running and stumbling over each other trying to get to the line so they can get lunch,
To go back to their class.
to get back to their classes in time, there's two sides of that combination that is like, yes, this is what we want, but we want it to work effectively.
Right.
Yeah.
So yeah.
And what is the biggest need you see too in the Puyallup School District?
I definitely think our teaching staff, there's a huge need in our diversifying our teaching staff. We also are dealing with our bus shortage. I remember being at my daughter's school all the time hearing school bus routes being canceled. So I'm like, okay, put them all in my car, but I can't do that. So that is a huge need. We have a levy that's coming up the next election, and so that's going to be big to push. Families there is not the trust right now. The trust is lacking in trying to get the levy passed or getting the funds. And is the levy the way to go? That's some things that we really need to look at as funding our schools. We have buildings. We have one particular high school right now that is pretty much crumbling. And what does it look like of trying to make sure that the space for these students to learn is healthy? It's equipped with enough space for the students. Our classroom sizes right now, we're busting at the seams. So we have classrooms where teachers have 30 up to 40 students in the classroom. There's one class, granted it is a co-taught class, there's 75 kids in the classroom. That's way too many kids.
It's like a college class,
right? Granted there's two teachers in there, but
Right.
that's a lot. And so someone coming from a background of education, I always say this, in early childhood education, the state law requires school-age children no more than 15 children in child care settings. What's the difference from before and after school program than where they're at during the day? It should be no more than 15, maybe 17 children in a classroom. That is for the well-being of the children and the well-being of the teacher who's having to care for each individual child's needs. There's no cookie cutter way to facilitate a classroom. Each child's needs need to be met. On top of that, teacher needs to be a well-rounded human being, be able to go home to their own family. And you want to put 40 kids in a class? That's too much. So we're dealing with that.
Well, one of the things I was thinking, at church when I used to go, I don't go anymore. When I used to go at church, they had a play, and I never forget this. They had a play where they had the footballs. What do they do when they draft? They draft football players, and they get millions of dollars contracts. And the play was about teachers, drafting teachers, and teachers getting. I think for me, you give me value.
Yes.
How much you pay me. That is it. The value comes, and what do you think the service or whatever I'm putting out there is, and we live in a country, in a world where we value more entertainment.
Right.
You pay a football player. There was at one point in Washington State, a football coach got more money than the governor. Got more money than the governor.
Right.
So what do you guys think? How we can change that environment of teachers, because they have to be always fighting for just to get. I was listening to NPR. In Alabama, a teacher gets paid $3,300. Not $3,300. $33,000.
Still very little.
A year.
That's very little.
Somebody without a degree gets that.
Right.
Here in Washington State. And I know we're talking the South and stuff. And there's a shortage.
Right.
300,000 teachers. How can we change that teachers feel value and feel that, what I do is throw out that environment where I even have people, my ex-husband used to say that, the teachers, they don't work, they get too much time off. I said, you serious?
Yeah.
In Panama, I would not want to go to school here. In Panama, we had 2 classes. We have from 7 to 12. And then you have from 1 to 5.
Okay.
And I love it. These kids are 8 hours, 10 hours in school.
Yep.
And and now they're changing the hours. You guys have to do anything? Because it was talking about high school, that high school kids are not getting enough sleep.
Right. They just changed the hours in Puyallup.
In Puyallup? So how is that change
So it didn't change very much because there was a big uproar about the change. Our high school kids start school like 8:20, 8:25-ish, and they give them a little more of a cushion with if running late to school. The hardest time is the junior high students have to be at school like 7:20. That's early.
That's really early.
That's very early. No, I don't care what age. No human being should have to start learning that early in the morning. That's so early.
Poor thing. Yes.
It's a struggle. And they don't get out to almost I think it's like 2:30. So it's a
long
long day.
day.
It's a very long day. And I mean, again,
That needs to change.
they need more time to eat. They need more time to sleep. They need more time.
So who changes that? You guys?
It would be the board. I say we because
the board. I wouldn't change the start times. That Chris Ragdoll, the superintendent of public instruction, told me that the surest way to get voted out is to change the school start times. So I would not touch that.
Yeah, because people
you know what I mean? Yeah.
People already use and probably make their schedule around
you think
that.
about childcare.
Yes,
Childcare as well.
Right, exactly.
They make their schedule
Change
around
your
it.
routine.
Yes,
So,
Okay.
so I would not touch that unless it was absolutely necessary. But no, I think I would not change that unless enough people came to public comment to advocate for that, for X and Y reason. But I was told that.
So how do you guys have anything to do with the pay that the teachers get?
Oh yes, I
was talking about that when I jumped into this. Yes, you guys have anything to do with that?
Yeah, and like for me, one of my goals is to work hand in hand with the teachers union to make sure that their contracts are fair and that they're making livable wages. There's
Any
there's
incentive
an impact
to attract more teachers?
Well, that's something that we'd have to work with the teachers union to see and look at the budget as well to see how much money we have so that we could offer incentives or bonuses. Also, we need to focus on retaining the staff that we have currently. Like I said, with the bus drivers not feeling supported, like if there's low morale, they're going to quit, they're going to resign, and so then we'll have a deeper shortage, a larger shortage of bus drivers. So I think we really need to focus on retaining the current staff that we have by making sure they're getting paid well and that they're feeling listened to and their concerns are being validated. Otherwise, we're just going to have a worse shortage than we have now. I think it starts with the board. The board has a lot of influence over those decisions, and working with the teachers union is going to be very important for any school board member. So that a fair contract is negotiated between the school district and the teachers union. So there's a level of influence that the board directors have. But also it's really important, the superintendent also has a huge role. The superintendent is not elected. The superintendent is appointed by the school board members, which are elected. And so this is why these elections are so important, because the superintendent of the school district is the person who does the day-to-day of the school district. The superintendent handles most of the daily business. And so this is why these elections are so consequential, because if you, for example, a lot of people in my district have voiced they have voiced concerns about the superintendent. They don't like the direction that the superintendent is trying to take the school district in. They think the superintendent is disconnected, that he doesn't listen, and so that's why I tell people, vote in our school district election, because
And he gets paid.
he gets paid $350,000 a year.
Yeah.
$350,000 a year, which I think is absolutely a lot of money. He makes more than the governor, it's a lot of money.
Wow.
There's an added piece to that I think is very important when we're looking at teacher ways. We have to go back to the history and look at the origin of the role. Before, it was always presumed to be women.
Right.
Mothers who are taking care. So there is that dehumanizing piece of they're just women taking care of children, and that is not what our field is.
Right.
We are not just like in early child. We say we're not daycare. We're childcare. We're educators. We're educating doctors. We're educating lawyers. We're educating surgeons. We're educating these individuals who are going to be the future, making our world. So when we change our perspective of how we see education, then we'll change our value of how we're paying educators. And part of that too is one thing when we're looking at, you said amazing things about the shortage and how retaining. Part of my job, my bill-paying job is I teach teachers. And so a lot of my students, I also have to help them get out and do student teaching. Particularly my students of color are going into school districts and they're getting the battle of their life. So they're not wanting to stay. I've had, and I don't want to tell all their personal stuff, I've had student teachers who go in and they're student teaching and they're being told not to wear their wigs or not to wear their hair, or and so there's that battle. So our teacher shortage, it's definitely a teacher shortage, but there's also an aspect of our teacher shortage who in that teacher shortage is not represented. And so that is a big piece of that, of where there are some teachers who are being retained, but is it the teachers that we need to be around our children and supporting our children? And so how are we making sure that we are flourishing and growing amazing teachers that are out there and paying them? And that also goes back to legislative. Part of the role when Pierce College was establishing their bachelor's program, that we had to go and testify at legislative, like the pay needs to be increased. The wage of a teacher needs to be increased. We have like $30,000, 40. Some teachers are making 60 base, but why do they have to jump through all these extra hoops?
They had that gap. There was
to get that huge gap, you know. So I definitely think like Tawana Noble's is amazing work that we as the board, as educators, we have to go to the legislature and say, hey, we need to look at this pay for our teachers and get that fixed. There should be that huge gap from a superintendent to a teacher. That's a huge gap.
Ridiculous.
Huge gap.
$350,000.
That's a huge gap.
Yes.
Wow.
Yeah, it's a lot of money.
So let's talk about politics a little bit. Why it is that you guys think it's important to? For me, I think it's very important. I was talking to Erasmo about this. To me, I think it's even more important. And I'm going to say something that people might not like. Cringe. Voting nationally, I don't know if your vote would make an impact. I know I have to say, everybody got to vote because everybody votes count.
Right.
Right? But when I think of locally, how important
it's so important.
is so important. We're talking about water, we talking about environment, we talking about our taxes, we are talking about food, we are talking, those are things that, and my show Erasmo is inclined to politics. Why? Because I think when people hear politics, they think about, a lot of people say, I don't vote, I don't do that because I don't like politics. And then when I explain to them, politics has to do with your everyday life. Somebody's sitting, making decisions about your water, about your environment, about how much you're going to pay for rent and food. That's what politics is.
Right.
You having somebody sitting down talking for you about those things.
Right.
So tell me how it is so important that people get engaged, especially if you have kids in school.
It's very important. When you're looking at local politics, you look at the system that's most directly impacting your everyday life. And so in Puyallup specifically, we've had races lost off of 20, 30 votes. So it's huge that people participate in local politics in that aspect. Also in our local politics, like you said, those are the people who are in Olympia who we vote. So it's very important that we understand that not only there's a piece of that too is when you're voting for local politics, you're voting for people who are most likely your neighbor, literally your neighbor. So you have that direct contact to be able to go sit in their office, sit on the porch with them, talk to them, see them at the grocery store. So that is part of the essence of community. We are here now I'm not going to be able to go see, Biden and all them at the grocery store.
Yes.
If I do, I'll let you know. But I'm not, my chances of that they're so far removed from my everyday life.
Yes.
Our local politicians, we're supposed to be in this together.
Yes.
And so what happens when you're looking at local politics and the people who are Currently, some of them currently in our office who are so far removed from the basic needs of your average person. Then we look at why are we having issue with our taxes? Why are we having issues with our safety? Because the people sitting in office right now are able to be part of this. And I hate using the elite because they're not better than people, but they're in a position where, hey, my water heater broke. Oh, I'll just write a check for that. Right. Not everybody has that privilege. And they don't understand. I was talking to a friend who's an amazing insurance agent, and I was like, we need to talk about affordable insurance for everybody, because when something happens in my house, I ain't got a checking account that can just write a check for that. When I die, the income needs to be there so my family can take care of the needs. Car insurance, if a car gets wrecked, writing a check to fix that. So it's our local politicians who can directly impact those decisions, and they're not so far removed from what's happening on the day-to-day.
I agree.
Erasmo.
I'm gonna give you a turn. I can keep going. I'm gonna give you a turn.
I agree. I mean,
why does that people have to vote? Need to vote, especially in local?
Well, as Davida said, a lot of these elections, local elections, are decided within 100 votes, and so it's really important to vote, because your vote really does make a huge impact. You know, like some elections, as I said, they're decided within 100 votes. And so it's really important to vote for the candidate you think is going to do the best job. But yeah, I mean, it's important. I've always voted in every election since I was eligible. I think the first time I voted was 2008 for Obama. So I've, just vote. Vote, and especially prioritize the local elections, because those are actually always really close elections. And so you always want to make sure that the more progressive, more progressive candidate wins. So it's important.
Especially our 18 to 25-year-olds. We really need you out.
Yes.
They tend to
and
forget.
Those are the ones that I have. My son right now, he's 25, and it's pulling teeth.
Yes.
It's like
at least vote locally.
Yes, he is, and they disengage. How much time we have? So I wanted to ask, why it is that you think tell people why it is that you think they should vote for you?
I'm the most experienced in this role. Don't want to give my opponent any airtime, but for myself in this position and as this candidacy, I have the most experience, both professionally and personally, in this role. I'm the main person who's been able to bring communities together for the voices of children and for the voices of children and families who've been silenced. And so I think that's very important with that. I have the degrees. I mean, like, I am the full package. Like, that's who I am as a candidate with that.
And that's why people should vote for you.
Well, I am an educator, social worker, mental health professional with more than a decade of experience. I also have lived experiences that I think would make me a great asset and a strong advocate for our students and teachers and parents on the school board. And I think it's time for change. We've had an incumbent that's been there for 20 years, and I think that I represent the change candidate. And so if you want to stick with the status quo, then vote for my opponent. But if you want change, and someone like myself that's a strong advocate for labor unions, pro-labor, pro-livable wages, then I am definitely the person that you should vote for.
And the elections, the last day, tell people when is the last day, and explain a little bit about where they need to go. I vote, normally I vote, the booth for me is in the library. It is in the library. I just go, drop it off. So talk a little bit of the people that probably never voted, and now they have where it is that you go and drop your ballots, all those things.
So November 7th is the closing of elections. You have until 8 p.m. that night. To turn in your ballot, you can turn it in at any local library. You can also go to the election office here in Tacoma. If you're not registered to vote, you can go up until the date of the election.
You have the same day.
You can go the same day,
Oh,
register the
nice.
same day, vote in the same space, but you have to do that in person at the election office.
okay.
With that piece, mail-in votes, I think those are still. You might
Yeah.
want to take this piece. I think I'm messing up on the date.
You should have, everyone that's registered to vote should have received a ballot in the mail by now. And so, so you just fill out your ballot and you sign the back of it, and then you can drop it off at an official drop box. There's multiple drop boxes all over Pierce County, and they're safe and secure. Or you can also drop off your ballot at a local post office. It doesn't require any postage, so you don't have to get a stamp. That's already paid for by Pierce County. So that's basically it. Or as Davida said, you can go in person and vote. There's designated polling locations where you can cast your vote in person if that's what you're most comfortable with. You can't register online to vote anymore since that deadline already passed, but as Davida said, you can go in person anytime between now and the election on November 7th and register in person to vote, and also vote as well on that same day.
Is it mail-in time? And this is where I get credit. The have your ballots in the mail is the same as the close of election, correct?
8 p.m.
Yeah.
Yeah, although post offices close around 6 o'clock or 5, so I think the ballot needs to be postmarked by
There you
8
go.
by 8 p.m. So if you're going to drop off your ballot at the post office, you can't do that at 8 o'clock. So you have to take it to the official drop box.
So I wanted to thank you guys for coming out. Please, everyone that is listening through VT Radio Universal, watching us through our Facebook, Instagram, go out and vote. Go out and vote. Local elections are even more important than the national elections. Go out and vote. And Washington State is one of the uniqueness of Washington State is that there's elections every year
Right.
in Washington State. So just go out and vote, get engaged with the political environment, because it's basically affecting the food that you're paying today,
Right.
the gas that you're putting in your car today. All of those different things are impacted by somebody that we voted in and making decisions on those things. So go out and vote, salgan a votar hoy, los que pueden que se involucren en el proceso político y salgan a votar, que tiene que ver con todo lo que es su diario vivir, lo que tiene que ver con la comida, la gasolina que pagan, la renta que pagan, los taxes que pagan. Anímense y salgan a votar hoy. Y les deseo un bonito día, que tengan un bonito día. Le quiero dar gracias a mis dos invitados, Davida y Erasmo Ruiz, y que tengan un bonito día. Y bueno, Cristian, gracias por ayudarnos. Thank you, everyone that's listening through Instagram, Facebook. I want to thank my guest, Davida. It's not the first and last time you're gonna be on my show. And Erasmo, he is right here all the time. So, and I just want to say, have a beautiful Sunday. I know, a wet Sunday. And thank you for listening to us through VT Radio Universal. Have a beautiful day. This is your host, Yazmin Ford, and Siembra. Thank you. Thank you, Chris.
Hi, thank you.
Yay. Yay.
los queremos invitar a nuestro evento navideño este año que será inolvidable.
Increíble si vienes a celebrar con nosotros, con tu familia.
Divertido.
Memorable.
Súper emocionante.
Bienvenidos.